Hello everyone, this is part 14 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. 12:01, Naruto said dejectedly, it's now officially Yuletide Eve. With the oil path Kankuro had followed gone, the three shinobi had been forced to use more traditional methods to try to find their targets. But checking with parts suppliers, and talking to people living and working around Nicholas's shop had proven fruitless. No one had seen anything strange around the toymaker's business, nor had anyone recognized the descriptions of the sand rogues. After completing their canvassing, the allies regrouped in the shop, where Nyoko was waiting with 4 guards. Now what? Kankuro asked. We could try Nyoko's plan, Naruto suggested. Would you know what to look for? Hinata asked. Sort of, he grinned dubiously. Kankuro described the renegades, and Nyoko can probably tell me what Nicholas looks like. That seems like a stretch, Kankuro was unconvinced. Besides, Hinata said, you should save your chakra in case we need to fight. The blonde Chunin was ready to protest, but he shut his mouth. Okay, he agreed. Man, it's too bad we can't keep following the oil trail. You must be good tracker, Kankuro, to follow some oil drips through the forests between the land of greens and here. I had some help, he admitted with an awkward chuckle. He took a small spray bottle hidden in his belt, and said, let me show you. He took one of the splinters from the floor, and scraped up a drop of the oil. He held it up in front of them, and misted a small amount of the blue liquid onto grease. The lubricant began to radiate orange light, and smoke slightly. Man, that stinks. Naruto covered his nose. What is that? Some sort of special tracking fluid. It's a cleaner. He wiped off the wooden shard to illustrate, leaving it totally unstained. I use it for maintenance on my puppets. The glow is just a side effect. Unfortunately, with the trail dried out, it's not any good. Maybe, Hinata considered that, but maybe not. Naruto smelled the oil out front, even though there wasn't any to see. And now your spray amplifies that odor. Let's try it out in the shop. There might be enough particles in the air to react and let us follow them. Even with the patch. Worth a try, the Sand Jonin agreed, and they all moved to the front of the store. Do you still smell it, Naruto? Hinata asked worriedly. Yeah, he answered after a few sniffs, it's still there, but it's getting fainter. Okay, then, Kankuro squirted blue cleanser near the scratches Hinata had found. Neither he, Nyoko, or the soldiers noticed any change, but Naruto's nose crinkled in disgust. Ugh, he grimaced, I can still smell that. How can you stand it? It doesn't smell that bad to me, the puppet master shrugged. And I can see it. Hinata glanced back at them with silvered eyes. Kankuro betrayed a slightly shock, but said nothing. Then we can track down Nicholas, Nyoko exclaimed happily. Not we, Hinata shook her head, you have to stay here. Or even better, return to the palace. You have school today. No, we have the 19th through the 23rd off for Yuletide, she smirked, besides, I'm the client. The contract is to find Nicholas, not to indulge your sense of adventure, the mission leader told her. But last time was an exception, Naruto told her gently, we were alone, so there was no other choice. I've put too many princesses in danger like that. This time we have your guards to keep you safe. But, perhaps we should contact Kentaro-san? Hinata asked, harshly, or the daimyo. No, Nyoko was practically shaking in anger, but she controlled her voice, I will remain here. The 3 ninja left out the back door. But once they were beyond the portal, Hinata collapsed against the wall. Naruto put a comforting hand on her shoulder, as she exhaled raggedly. Hey, Kankuro chuckled once, I wouldn't have thought you had it in you, girl. To stand up to a princess, especially one that's as strong-willed as I've heard Nyoko is. I knew you could, Hinata, Naruto said firmly. Lady Tsunade put me in charge, she was addressing herself as much as them, had to do it. It was my responsibility. Alright, boss, Kankuro's voice was only slightly mocking, shall we see if we can pick up the trail? Naruto shot him a mildly nasty look, but Hinata pushed herself back upright, her composure recovered. Yes, she answered, again activating the Suijin Byakugan, go ahead. They were fortunate it was so early in the day, and the streets were still empty. Even with Naruto's nose and Hinata's eyes, it was far from an easy task. The traces of oil grew further apart, and they had to move slowly. And there was the practical limit. Kankuro's supply of the cleaner was limited after the tracking he had already done. After almost 5 hours, the trail went totally dead, but Kankuro and Hinata agreed that they had probably found the hideout. Naruto, however, remained dubious. An abandoned factory. Naruto protested quietly, on the off chance they were right. Come on, do you think these guys subscribe to cliched villains quarterly? It isn't abandoned. Hinata shook her head. This company makes summer toys, like beach balls and swimming flippers. It is natural they would be mostly shut down for the winter. But they might still have designers working on next year's models. Naruto pondered that, and Kankuro tossed in his 2 ryo. Clichés are cliché for a reason, he told the dubious younger man. This place has to have workshops, and tools, and supplies, but like Hinata said, it's closed down for the winter. If someone came, heard some noise or saw some lights, they'd probably just write it off. Well, then, let's check it out, Naruto agreed, looking more suspiciously at the large brick structure. The temporary trio had lighted to the roof next door for the debate, and to get the lay of the land. After convincing the rebellious junior, the shinobi leapt silently to the other roof. They prowled soundlessly around the edge of the building, until Hinata signaled for a stop. She stared down at the ground, her face softening. Then she hopped down to the packed earth, 3 stories below. The boys followed suit, and when they landed, the Hyuga heiress pointed to a dark red spot in the dust, spilling out from one of the large shipping doors. Blood. Kankuro mouthed wordlessly, and the brilliant-eyed Kunoichi nodded. There are 2 bodies one the other side of this door, she whispered. Based on their clothes and equipment, I think they may have been guards. Damn, Naruto cursed. Do you see them? The sand ninja pressured. No. Hinata stared intently at the building, moving her head from side to side as if scanning, instinctually, even if the Byakugan made the action unnecessary. Then she paused, focusing on the 2nd floor, to the left of where they stood. There is something odd up there, she said softly, unsure. It's a 2-part office, right next to the 2nd-story workshop floor. Something about it looks wrong, but there isn't a genjutsu. It's almost like a mirage in the desert, but I can't. A holographic barrier ninjutsu, Kankuro said slowly, as if admitting a secret. Unlike a genjutsu that affects the target's eyes or mind, this jutsu is much more difficult to pierce because it directly manipulates the light passing through the air. It's also much harder to use. In that case, Hinata's eyes squinted, and the surrounding veins pulsed angrily. Ah! She cried out quietly, and when Naruto looked into her face, he saw a spot of red spreading in her left cornea. She slumped slightly, as her irises returned to normal. Hinata, are you okay? He asked carefully, taking her hand. I think I pushed a little too hard, she admitted, but I was able to see past the weaving. There are 4 people in there, 3 men and 1 woman. 2 of the men are sleeping in the outer room, and the woman is standing guard. The last man appears to be working alone in the inner office. I think that must be Nicholas. So what are we waiting for? Naruto asked. Hinata shook her head. I think, she started cautiously, but then she paused, and started again more firmly, we need to rescue the hostage first. Once he is safe, we can help Kankuro defeat the renegades. Do you agree? Despite his earlier half-taunt, Hinata knew she had no authority over the higher-ranked sand ninja, so she sought his approval. That will works for me, he told her. Heck, I might not even need your help, but I'm certainly not going to turn it down either. Hinata, do you see any traps? Naruto asked, and his paramour answered in the negative. The hologram is also an alarm, Kankuro warned. If we disrupt the altered flow of the light, whoever created the jutsu will know. What if we go into the room from above? Their leader asked, and the puppeteer considered that. Hinata dug 3 kunai into the wooden floor, and secured cords to them. Naruto drew Kitsune, and used its wind chakra blade to slice a hole in the floor around the blades. Hinata silently lifted the cutout free, and set it gently beside her. Impatient as always, Naruto popped his head down the hole. An elderly man sat at a large table. He was slender, and his white hair was thinning. His face was lined with age, and with stress. He also had a purple, partially scabbed gash over his right temple. He pulled back from his task, and Naruto saw defeat and exhaustion in his gentle brown eyes. On the table was a partially disassembled puppet, basically human-shaped, but with 3 legs. And its hands and feet were replaced by enlarged spearheads. That's new. Kankuro's harsh voice was touched with worry. Before that mannequin just had spears for hands. Then we better get him out of there, quick, Naruto whispered back. But this time he waited for Hinata's signal before leaping in. She nodded, and he hopped down. When the toymaker saw him, he started to shout, but quickly closed his mouth instead. Nicholas-san, Naruto whispered. The elder gentleman nodded. We were sent to rescue you, Hinata said, landing beside her partner. Come on, Uzumaki said, glancing nervously at the door. I can't, the craftsman shook his head. Why not? Naruto hissed. Hinata scanned him, looking for some sort of restraints or jutsu. There were none, but she noticed something else. Your right leg is severely broken, she told him. They broken it when I tried to escape, he agreed, but that is not the reason. They have a list of a group of children. They said they would kill the children if I did not help them. Hinata gasped, and Naruto growled, the kids you're gonna give presents to tonight. So you know about that, too? He looked at him, but his hands continued to work. Then you must understand. I cannot allow anything to happen to those children. They have promised if I finish the upgrades on their puppets, they will leave the children alone. They might, Kankuro agreed, dropping into the room, but there's no way they're letting you live. Another sand ninja. The toymaker looked hard at Kankuro. Do you disagree with your comrades, then? Comrades. Kankuro sniffed, hardly. Those 3 are traitors. And that damage you're repairing. I caused it, Rasuniko Dono. The craftsman's eyes went wide, but after a moment he sighed sadly. I was afraid that might be the case. But you are also incorrect, Sand Ninja. My name is not Rasuniko. It is Nicholas, the second. Rasuniko was my father. That is impossible, Kankuro shook his head. Rasuniko had no children before leaving the Sunagakur. And you are too old to have been born after he settled here. Only now did the artist pause in his enhancement. He set down his awl and hammer, and passed his hands before his face. After his fingers slid away, he appeared much younger, with thick brown hair, and smooth skin. He appeared to be in his late 20s or early 30s. But the injury over his temple remained. I use a transformation to wear my father's appearance, to keep his legacy alive. So he taught you ninjutsu. Kankuro's eyes had a dangerous shine, not unlike the one that used to possess Gaara. Not really, the toymaker resumed his tinkering, not noticing or not caring, transformation to look like him, a few stealth techniques to deliver the Yuletide gifts, and, of course, puppet making. Nothing that violated his oaths. The sand shinobi nodded, temporarily mollified. We should hurry, Hinata urged. I have already told you, I cannot leave. His voice was soft, but determined. He closed up the panels on the puppet. No matter happens to me, I will not put those children at risk. Even if it means my own death. Oh, you need not worry about that, a deep, gravely voice said behind them. Even as the 3 teens reacted, the puppet rose from the table and flew back to its owner. The short, bulky kunoichi looked over her modified marionette with a canny, yet pleased expression on her face. Her narrow eyes were a reddish-orange, and her carefully shaped hair had streaks of green and yellow. Her face was one of sculptured beauty, but there was something unsettling about the way she cocked her head. We would never waste a craftsman such as yourself, she told the toymaker and Hinata's team. After we have dispatched your would-be rescuers, we will remove you to a more secure location. There, you can upgrade my brother's undamaged puppets, and then begin to create additional weapons for us. Once that task is complete, we can begin to assemble an army of lesser puppeteers. Why do they all want to take over the world? Kankuro groaned. Cliched villains quarterly, Hinata remembered with a slight grin. Naruto chuckled in agreement. Mock if you think it will help you, she shrugged calmly, your weakness cannot be hidden by mere words. Sis. One of 2 male rogues whispered loudly, you do know who they are, right? Kankuro, we have fought before, and we are stronger now, she glared at her underlings. his underlings are of no consequence. She looked back at the leaf and sand trio, and addressed them, shall we take this out to the main floor? I doubt you want Master Nicholas harmed any more than we do. Were they like this before? Hinata asked as they complied. Pretty much, Kankuro answered, she likes to talk all fancy, and give orders. Jonuchi, you will fight the little waif. She relies on ranged attacks, so Dart and Bolt can tie her up in close combat. Honda, you fight the blonde idiot, his brute strength will be worthless against Block's improved defenses. I wish to see how Kankuro's broken down relics compare to the improved Star-chan and Moon-chan. The two men exchanged worried glances, but nevertheless moved as instructed. Jonuchi, the one who had tried to warn their leaders, circled away, focusing his attention on Hinata. He was taller than the kunoichi, but so painfully thin he appeared to weigh less. He touched the tattoos on forearms, summoning forth his combat puppets. They were a matched set, both shaped like slightly humanoid cats, 4 feet long, bipedal, though hunched forwards. Each automaton had 3-fingered hands at the end of each limb, and a foot-long blade at the end of its tail. Hinata allowed him to draw her away, curious how her ranged attacks would work. The former sand ninja swung his arms forward, and both of the marionettes jerked towards her aggressively. Honda was only a few inches shorter than Jonuchi, but weighed at least twice as much. Despite his flab, he moved smoothly and quickly as he conjured his puppet out of a spear. Block lived up to its name, with a massive, stone, rectangular body. Its upper arms, legs, and even its head were square. Its lower arms and legs were more rounded, but its hands folded into perfect metal cubes. Even as Star took up position before her controller, the renegade kunoichi brought forth her second puppet. Moon was another female humanoid puppet, with a crescent moon sword, and a shield emblazoned with the surface of the moon. Hinata observed the feline puppets carefully through her Byakugan. She could see the gears and chains, and also the streams of chakra directing their movements. Dart bolted straight for her chest, while Bolt darted around to hamstring her from behind. Hinata easily ducked under the high attack, and just before the low attack struck her, she tapped the clawed hand with her gentle fist. The blades retracted as the apparatus holding them in place was dislodged, and the entire hand fell limp as the line of power directing it was severed at the same time. The Hyuga heiress continued her controlled fall, pushing her elbow gently into Dart's chest, dislodging part of its spine, and making its back legs spasm. The puppet tumbled over her aimlessly, and its controller struggled to make it stand again. Not willing to let her gain too much initiative, Jonuchi directed Bolt to slash out at her with its razor-edged tail. Out of position for a forearm strike, Hinata instead flipped up onto her hands, and spun around with her feet extended. Byakugan art, 8 trigrams soul's heavenly spin, she exclaimed, expelling chakra from her feet, and violently knocking both puppets away from her. No one can get past Block, Honda boasted, maneuvering the giant automaton between himself and younger Leaf Ninja. But Uzumaki just smirked. No. 1. Ha. The blonde Chunin put his hands together, then how about 10? Shadow clone jutsu. Or, crap. 5 Narutos went to Block and Honda's left, and the other 5 ran to the right. After an instant of indecision, Honda slung Block at the group to the left. Though it clipped 4 of the clones, only 1 was destroyed. Even as the statue-like puppet began to move back to the other set of clones, the 4 remaining duplicates grabbed onto it, slowing the stone and steel golem down. It managed to reach the closest Naruto, and with a swung that would have impressed Tsunade, slammed the clone on its right arm into the other facsimile, causing both to disappear in matched explosions. The next closest Naruto from the right-hand set turned back to help his 3 comrades hanging on for dear, if temporary, life. But the remaining 3 Narutos closed the distance, and Honda was forced to both use his talisman spear to defend himself, and keep control of Block. The 4 versions of the blonde Chunin each clung to one of the puppet's limbs, trying to slow it down while at the same time preventing it from eliminating them. Kankuro noted with dismay that Crow's lower left arm was reacting slowly, even as his first puppet discharged a spray of needles at his enemy. Moon jumped in the way of the attack, and the thin spikes bounced off the doll's shield. He had done his best to repair the massive damage dealt to the trio by Sasori, but feared he had failed to fully restore his mechanical allies. Even if he had done a perfect job, they had taken some knocks in the previous battle, and he had not had the time to fix them. Black Ant moved forward, the saw blades in its 6 arms aimed at Star from all sides. But the newly enhanced puppet dug one of her spear-like feet into the factory's wooden floor, and while balancing on that post, deflected Ant's attacks with her other 4 limbs. The traitor's hand darted forward, and her 2 puppets each discharged a sextet of shuriken at Kankuro. The shape of the blades matched each puppet's name. Star used 5-pointed shuriken, while Moon fired crescent-shaped blades. Salamander appeared at the last instant, blocking the attack with its armored frills. Dart flopped like a fish out of water as Jonuchi tried to get its spine back into alignment. At the same time, Bolt sparred with Hinata, trying desperately to keep her away from its controller, and from disabling it as she had its twin. But just as she had a clear shot at the marionette's right shoulder, she was knocked away as Honda and Block barreled into her, one the shadow clone still trying to dig a kunai into the puppet's left elbow. Joe, switched with me, Honda said softly. But Sis said. I know what Anzu-san said, the heavier ninja barked, still trying not to be heard by their leader, but she hasn't been right in the head ever since Sasori-sama kidnapped the Kazekage. I mean, all this stuff about calling her, sis. You might think it's kinky, but to me, it's just nuts. Maybe, the taller warrior wavered, fear showing in his voice, but if we don't follow her orders. If we finish these 2, she won't care if they switched on us during the fight. Right. Realization filled Jonuchi's eyes, and he smirked. Then he pulled his puppets back, having Bolt crack Dart's artificial vertebrae back into place in the process. Then both of the speedy automatons jumped forward to intercept the incoming Narutos. The remaining clones were destroyed in the blink of an eye, and Uzumaki was knocked to the side. If that's how you want it, fine, Jonuchi declared loudly, before winking at his teammate. What now, Missy? Honda sneered as Hinata dodged Block's heavy overhand punch. The wooden floor splintered from the attack, showing darkened room underneath. Block won't give one whit about your fancy gentle fist, he continued. As she observed the massive construct, she was forced to agree. Block's inner workings were buried under thick layers of stone and metal armor, too deep for her specialized taijutsu to reach. Though she was fast enough to avoid the marionette's attacks, it thwarted her attempt to dodge around. She considered using shadow clones, but remembered it had taken Naruto 9 clones to get 3 around Block. Even though she was quicker than her beloved, Hinata knew creating the 5 or 6 clones it would take her to get past would be dangerous for her chakra reserves, especially considering how much she had used her Byakugan over the last 15 hours. She watched carefully for an opening as she pondered her options. Go ahead, kid, Jonuchi taunted, come after me with your clones. My puppets will take them apart as fast as you can make them. He sent the felines out, 7 of 8 sets of claws extended. Naruto slid past most of the slashes, but Dart's left rear leg tagged him, slicing through his jacket and grazing his right arm and side. How about I just break your toys? Instead, the Leaf Shinobi shot back, unconcerned. In one clean motion, he drew Kitsune, and in his left hand, he formed a Rasengan. Without waiting for any kind of answer, he followed Dart, swinging his weapon at the same spot Hinata had previously struck on the puppet's chest. Jonuchi brought Dart's tail up to block, but the staff blade shattered the cheap steel of the feline's bladed tail, and continued unimpeded to the puppet's chest. As Dart again was thrown to the side, Bolt moved in to cover its partner. However, Naruto was prepared, and caught Bolt's extended hand with his Rasengan, grinding away the marionette's thumb and first finger. The Sand Renegade withdrew both puppets, looking for another opening. You will be made to pay for what you did to Star-chan before, Anzu informed Kankuro. Moon jumped forward, blocking Crow's knives with her shield, and angling her sword for the second joint in the other puppet's lower left arm. The chakra-hardened bronze blade dug into the ridge, carving though one of the gears. Kankuro responded by have Crow wrapped both of his left limbs around Moon's sword and wrist, trapping the celestial marionette. Meanwhile, Black Ant and Salamander attempted to corral Star, so one of the 2 hollow automatons could trap her. But the multi-legged construct was quick, and continued to fire star-shaped shuriken at Kankuro. In return he was forced to use either Ant or Salamander to block, which made it easier for Star to continue evading. When he saw an opening, Kankuro drew a pair of kunai, and threw them both at Anzu directly. But the traitorous Jonin was not surprised, and displayed her prowess by catching the blades in the strings that controlled Star and Moon. The move forced her to withdraw the puppets slightly, and the Kazekige's brother took advantage. He gestured forcefully with his fingers, and Black Ant flew through the air, catching Moon while she was out of position. His 6 hands forced her into his chest cavity, even as Crow's limbs started to detach. Secret black art, Iron Maiden, Kankuro proclaimed as Crow's hidden blades stabbed into the slots in Ant's torso. Once all of the blades had pierced the casket, Crow started to reassemble, and Kankuro smirked as his opponent as he started to plan Star's destruction. But before he could attack, Ant's body began to jerk and rumble. The trapping puppet could no longer contain it, and the imperfect sphere burst forth, taking one of Ant's panels with it. The miniature Moon had a number of new scratches on the crated surface, where the shield did not cover. But Moon unfolded herself with only superficial damage. I think our toymaker may have surpassed his famous father, Anzu purred, an incredible prize indeed. Hinata was in a pinch. Nothing she had tried had made any impact on Block. Even her Rasengan had only marred the surface of the reinforced puppet. She grimaced as Block grazed her with a punch. She knew she was lucky nothing was broken from even the glancing blow. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Hinata split in two, hoping one of her could get through to Honda. But Block's arm swung independently, and it hit both of the girls. The copy exploded, and Hinata cried out in pain as she tumbled to the floor. Hinata. Naruto tried to break away to help her, but Dart and Bolt circled around, keeping him at bay. I'm okay, Hinata grimaced as she stood, but nothing is working. Not even the Rasengan. Maybe it's time to break out your new jutsu. But I've never used it in battle before, she stammered, and there's no earth here. There's gotta be a first time, he shouted, clocking Dart upside the head with Kitsune, and that guy has all the earth you need. He pointed, and Hinata realized he was talking about the stone and clay that made up Block. She nodded, her face firm. All right, I'll give it a try, she began signing, even as she charged Block. Ushi Ainu Yuhitsuji, she announced as she signaled ox, boar, dog, rabbit, and ram. Byakugan art, primordial chakra jutsu. Hinata landed on Block's chest, and pushed her right palm into the rocky panel. The granite began to glow reddish purple, and a mass of visible, magenta chakra exploded from the puppet. It traveled back down the control strings, and struck Honda. He howled in agony, and then collapsed to the floor, dropping his spear. At the same instant, Block went limp. Wad you do ta me? The thick puppeteer mumbled, struggling back up to his knees. I combined my chakra with the chakra in the stone, creating an interference wave I can send through the ground, or along our existing chakra path, she told him. It's kinda like getting hit with an 8 trigram 64 palms all at once, Naruto confided from experience, it overwhelms your muscles and chakra points. Honda grabbed Block's control element, but could not muster the chakra to move the golem, and so ended up just leaning on the spear. Hinata exhaled, forcing the exhaustion from her face as she turned to help Naruto. But there was no need. Dart could no longer straighten its head after the last blow, and it was missing its right arm from the elbow down. Bolt had fared slightly better, the only major damage was the missing fingers from Naruto's first Rasengan attack. Jonuchi had been starting to look desperate as his enemy dismantled the first of his puppets, but now that Hinata was closing in, his near panic became resigned resolve. He pulled the rings connected to the puppet's thread off his fingers, and raised his hands in defeat. As the 6 bands hit the ground, his puppets too went slack. I give up, he told them, I didn't sign on for this. Honda nodded his head. What do you mean? Hinata asked. Anzu lied to us, he answered, stepping slowly away from his weapons to prove his words. After the Kazekage returned, and we learned Sasori-sama was dead, she started to get strange. One day, she told us we had a mission and we left the village. But like I said, she lied. Before we figured out what was going on, we had already been declared rogues. Sis told us if we went back, we were dead anyway, so we stayed with her. That's why you two convinced her to running instead of trying to finish, Kankuro added, remembering how Jonuchi had caught him with the reeds. Yeah, the penitent ninja nodded, we didn't want to kill a comrade, but we didn't think you would listen to us either. Traitors! Anzu shouted. She broke away from Kankuro. She took off at top speed, and for a moment, they thought she was going to run. But once she was past Naruto, she veered back. She stopped in front of Honda, and snatched the spear from his hands. With a fluid motion, she spun the blade around, and jammed it into his disabled underling's heart. Even as Block sprang back to life, she turned to face the Sand and Leaf allies, blood dripping from the point of the weapon. The puppets closed ranks around her, and she grinned viciously at them. I apologize for the interruption, she said evenly, shall we continue? Hinata stepped defensively in front of Jonuchi, but continued to watch him carefully through her Byakugan. Naruto took up position by Kankuro, who was attempting to determine the extent of the damage to Black Ant without lowering his guard. I never expected you two to be such a disappointment, Anzu told her surviving minion, even as she positioned her automatons. Block angled to attack Kankuro, Star faced off against Hinata, while Moon prepared to intercept Naruto. But now you will see the full power of Sasori's daughter. Her show of elegance was cracking, and she all but cackled her proclaimed lineage. Her fingers twitched around Block's spear, and Star and Moon fired blades at Naruto and Hinata. Hyuga dodged the shuriken, while Naruto knocked him away with Kitsune and a kunai he had drawn in his left hand. The largest puppet trudged inexorably towards the loyal Sand Shinobi. Kankuro caused Crow and Ant to fire needles at the golem, but they bounced off without so much as a scratch. He knew his poison attacks would do nothing to the puppet warrior, leaving him with the dubious option of melee combat. Having caught glimpses of Naruto's fight with Block, he estimated that Crow and Black Ant's constriction powers could similarly slow the large puppet down. He was less sure their blades could inflict enough damage to disable their opponent. Unlike Kankuro's puppets, Moon made no noise as she raised her exaggerated scimitar to salute Naruto. But the blonde Chunin did not move his staff blade out of position, staring intently at Puppetswood's woman. She stepped forward, stabbing directly for his heart. He caught the curved blade with his straight weapon, and used the momentum to launch a spin kick at Moon. The marionette raised her shield, and caught Naruto's foot on the edge. The round guard sliced almost entirely through his open-toed sandal, and the teen realized the shield was for more than just defense. He stepped back. Thankfully she had only hit his shoe, not his foot. With this new information, he adjusted his style slightly, bringing his kunai up horizontally in front of his chest. Star danced after Hinata on her right and center legs, while attacking the young woman with her third leg and both arms. Unfortunately, only Star's oversized spearheads were coming close to Hinata, and they contained no mechanisms or chakra streams, so the Hyuga heiress could not use her gentle fist to disrupt the puppet. She took a deep gash on the back of her left hand, and fell back a few more steps to think. But Anzu did not give her the chance, pressing the puppet forward. 8 trigrams empty palm, Hinata breathed, jabbing her right hand out, palm first. The burst of chakra threw the puppet away, the points of her feet scraping the floor. To keep from falling, Star planted her third foot, and leaned into the attack. In the end, the marionette was forced back only half as far as Hinata had expected, and was still standing. Kankuro had an idea, one so stupidly inspired, it might have come directly from Naruto. When in the land of fire, he murmured to himself. Both Crow and Black Ant dove forward, each wrapping their multiple extendable arms around both of Block's legs. The stony puppet continued to try to walk forward, but was held fast. Both of Kankuro's puppets strained against the superior strength of Honda's puppet. Kankuro gestured again, and Salamander barreled forward. It jumped, and instead of simply landing on Block's chest, it jumped again, pushing off with all 4 feet. With its legs tied, Block could not resist Salamander's weight, and fell backwards. Crow and Ant quickly detached themselves, and the moving statue landed heavily on its back, shaking the whole floor. The clumsy automaton endeavored to stand, but Crow, Ant, and Salamander continued to strike at its limbs, keeping it down. Now what? He asked her tauntingly. While his trio kept Block neutralized, he drew out more kunai, and threw them at his opponent. Anzu snorted, knocking the blades down. She slid her right hand to the middle of the spear. Block vanished, while Moon slashed at Naruto's neck with her sword, and his thighs with her shield. As Uzumaki blocked with his 2 weapons, she moved her left hand to meet her right. In the process, Block reappeared, one of its feet pinning Salamander. The same move caused Star to put her 5 limbs together into one large point, and launch at Hinata like a drill. Hinata! Naruto shouted as the puppet tore into her chest. But the expected spray of blood never appeared. Instead, Hinata exploded in a cloud of smoke, and a splintered desk was left in her place. Substitution. Anzu's head darted from side to side, while Star regained her feet. Where is she? But Hinata did not reappear, and Anzu directed Star to flank Naruto. Hinata landed in place of the desk, in the outer office. She quickly padded over to the door, and watched the fight, hoping for some sort of opening. The movement was mostly redundant, thanks to her enhanced vision, but she looked through the gap anyway as a matter of training and instinct. Hinata-san, Nicholas called softly to her. She ignored him, worrying as Star stabbed at Naruto. Her beloved caught the spear with his throwing blade, but was pushed closer to Moon. Please, Hinata-san, I need to speak to you. The toymaker's voice grew more insistent. Against her better judgment, she backed away from the door, and moved closer to the hostage. You are Hinata Hyuga, correct? Nicholas asked, of the Hyuga clan. Possessor of the Byakugan. She nodded, and he exhaled in relief. Then we may be able to help your friends, he told her. I am not particularly naive, or stupid. When I was repairing and enhancing Star, Moon, and Block, I gave them a weakness. Hinata's eyes flared slightly, but she did not speak. The toymaker held up a small copper pin, just over 2 inches in length. Each of those puppets has a keystone pin, just like this, he explained. If you can remove, or even break it, those 3 will no longer function correctly. Hinata studied the pin for a moment, and then muttered a soft, thank you. Do not thank me. I should have done more. Or maybe I should have done less. Though she felt for him, Hinata could not spare him any words. She was already moving closer to the battle, studying the marionettes for this weak spot. Salamander's chest groaned in protest as Block leaned forward, putting more weight onto the reptilian puppet. Crow and Black Ant had each snared one of Block's arms, and were pulling back as hard as they could, trying to keep the behemoth from crushing their counterpart. Star jabbed with 3 of her limbs in a vertical line. Naruto blocked the attack, but the topmost spear was the least deflected and it struck his left shoulder. Uzumaki somersaulted backwards to avoid Moon's sword. He landed behind the lunar puppet, and quickly lashed out with a 3/4 complete Rasengan. Moon turned back far enough to catch the attack on her shield. The spiraling orb marred the surface of the disc, and pushed part of the dome inwards, but ultimately unraveled before it could destroy the barrier. Anzu was shocked, and then annoyed when she noticed the damage. She gestured angrily, and Block swung its arm backwards, catching Crow under the jaw, and knocking him into the ceiling. At the same instant, Star and Moon both attacked Naruto from all quarters, left, right, high, and low. Hinata was moving, even as Naruto ducked down, blocking Moon's shield with Kitsune and sacrificing his right leg to Star. As she zipped towards the battle, she formed a Rasengan. As she reached Naruto and the 2 automatons facing him, she grabbed Moon's left shoulder with her left hand, and drilled the Rasengan in her right hand into the small of Moon's back. Not as heavily armored as Block, the swordswoman puppet's back armor was shredded away, and when the hole was large enough, Hinata released the 4th Hokage's jutsu, and the hand that had held the sphere dove inside the puppet. With a slight grunt of effort, she yanked her limb free, clutching a small copper pin between her thumb and first 2 fingers. As Hinata tossed the pin away, Moon's actions became distorted, and her previously silent workings began to grind and clank. What did you do to Moon-chan? Anzu howled, her ragged eyes turning a deeper red. She gestured broadly, and Star swung wildly at Hinata, but Naruto easily blocked the simplistic attack. I found a vulnerability in each of them, Hinata told Naruto, a place where a number of important parts come together. We need to help Kankuro, but Block's weak spot is on the left side of his head, and I can't get through his armor. He stepped behind her to cut off the stellar marionette again, and then said, I think I have a plan. He whispered a few words in her ear, and Hinata took off towards Block. Naruto tried to follow, but Star cartwheeled in front of the leaf chunnan, and he had to stop short to avoid losing a foot. Block continued to put its weight on Salamander. The behemoth had also caught one of Crow's arms, and was beginning to swing Crow at Black Ant like a flail. Hinata ducked under the improvised weapon, and ran up Block's left leg, stopping on his chest. Ushi Ainu you, she signaled again, but Anzu cut her off, plunging the spear into the ground and releasing it. I won't fall for that trick, she exclaimed regally. If I'm not connected to Block, then your jutsu won't work. But Hinata just grinned in satisfaction, as her backpack exploded. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto was already incanting as his transformation ended. The duplicate fighting star let himself get tagged, to return a portion of his chakra to the original Uzumaki. Naruto held back his right hand, and the new copy began to jab at the space above his palm. As he and his clone darted the remainder of the way up Block's chest, a green orb formed. Fuyutan, Rasengan. Both Naruto's shouted, and he thrust the sphere into the side of Block's head. The wind-enhanced sphere did what none of their other attacks could, ripping past the steel and granite armor like tissue paper, exposing the mechanics underneath. Hinata stepped past Naruto, and extracted Block's keystone as well. Look out, Kankuro warned. With neither direction from Anzu, nor the pin locking it in position, Block was no longer putting any force on Salamander, and the reptile puppet pushed Behemoth onto its back again. Naruto and Hinata leapt way, landing on either side of the immobile giant. You wretched little girl, Anzu shouted, look what you did to Block-kun and Moon-chan. I will make you suffer, just like they did. While they had dealt with Block, she had collected Moon's sword and shield. She had also moved Star away, so they could not disable her last puppet. Panting with rage, she charged Hinata, brandishing both weapons. Her mad dash left a single perfect opening, and without a twinge of regret, the Hyuga heiress exploited the weakness. Slipping around the sharpened shield, she plunged her glowing fingers at Anzu's left breast. The gentle fist severed a vein in the puppeteer's chakra network, and stopped her heart. Anzu looked at Hinata with surprised, glassy eyes, and unexpectedly gave a jerk forward. Then a line of blood began to flow out of the right-hand corner of her mouth. As she collapsed backward, they could see Star, curled into her drill position, all 5 spears buried deep in Anzu's back. She tried the same trick on me, Kankuro said, charging in, hiding Star behind her, then ducking away at the last minute. I guess she didn't count on you being able to stop her cold like that. The loyal puppeteer disconnected her from the puppet, and laid the body on the floor. He then quickly retrieved Block's spear and Star and Moon's scrolls. She wasn't really Sasori's daughter. Jonuchi looked regretful as he walked slowly over to his fallen leader. I checked it out, she was born 11 months after he left the Sunagakur. And there was no evidence of her mother having any sort of contact with him. I don't know if someone told her that he was her dad, or if she decided it for herself. I wanted to tell her, but I never could. I was too afraid. Kankuro banished Block, Star, and Moon back to their respective talismans. Then he placed the scrolls and spear, along with dart and bolt, into Black Ant's damaged compartment. After recalling the 6-armed marionette, he moved Anzu and Honda's bodies into Salamander, before storing that puppet as well. Kankuro, Nicholas called for the younger man's attention. While Gaara's brother had been doing the work of a hunter ninja, the Leaf Shinobi had collected their target. The Toymaker was leaning on Naruto to make up for his damaged leg. The Sand Ninja finished putting regular handcuffs on his prisoner, and turned his attention back to the craftsman. After you finish your mission, if you can return here, it would be my honor to help you repair your puppets, the injured civilian offered. I just might take you up on that, the Kazekige's brother said carefully, and then raised his hand in departure. Naruto, Hinata, thanks for the help. See ya around. Wait, Jonuchi interrupted insistently. The prisoner reached into his pocket, and removed a slip of paper, which he handed to the Toymaker. Your list, he explained. I hoped if Anzu didn't have it on her, she might forget about it. Thank you, Nicholas said sincerely, grimacing as he bowed slightly. Mr. Nicholas, Nyoko was ecstatic when Naruto helped the Toymaker through the door. Before they had left the factory, Nicholas had resumed his father's appearance. The 2 shinobi had wanted to take him to a hospital, but he insisted on returning to his shop first. As soon as they entered, Hinata drew Kentaro away, quietly informing him what had occurred. The princess ran over to the 2 men. What's wrong? She asked, immediately noticing the craftsman could not stand on his own. My leg is broken, he told her. You mean they broke it? She recognized he was specifically withholding blame. He did not acknowledge that. So where are they? She turned her ire onto Naruto. 2 of them are dead. The 3rd surrendered, and Kankuro is taking him back to the hidden sand, he answered directly. Good, she said fiercely. Then her face softened, and she said, too bad Kankuro couldn't say goodbye. You sure got over me fast, Naruto needled, feeling he was due at least that. I like Hinata, she shrugged, but if she ever dumps you. She smirked at him, and he just shook his head in false dismay. The princess turned her attention back to the toymaker. You should be in the hospital, she chided, what if you have internal injuries? And why didn't you take him to a doctor? She rounded on Naruto again. I am in no immediate danger, Nicholas informed her, my captors wanted to prevent my escape, but could not risk my life. She was very careful and deliberate about how she injured me. And I told Naruto-san and Hinata-san to bring me here, Nyoko-sama. Why? Nyoko managed a determined look despite her confusion. Nicholas removed the slip of paper from his pocket. My deliveries, he answered softly, I am in no shape to be sneaking around tonight, so I will need to make them this afternoon. But, Nyoko was crestfallen, but it won't be the same. Perhaps, but this is the way it has to be, he told her. Unless, Hinata returned, as Nyoko's head bodyguard dispatched the 2 soldiers who had been watching the shop. Unless, Nyoko parroted insistently. Unless we deliver the gifts for Nicholas, Hinata said. What? Both the toymaker and the princess were shocked by the suggestion. Yeah, Naruto agreed, we could be Nicholas's little helpers, just this once. Nyoko, you hired us to preserve the wonder and joy of Nicholas's secret late-night visits, Hinata reminded, this is the next logical part of that mission. It isn't a bad idea, the daimyo's daughter nodded, if Mr. Nicholas agrees. The 3 teens looked at the disguised gift giver intently. He, in turn, studied the 2 chunin carefully. It appears I have no other option, he relented. The toymaker had given him a quick rundown of his methods, and handed him the list. Afterwards, they were left with more than 10 hours until the deliveries were to begin. With only the slightest prompting, they agreed to spend the rest of the day with Nyoko, especially after learning that her parents were away on diplomatic business. Though she attempted to impress them with the palace, and a 5-star dinner, they could tell she was really just happy not to be alone, to be spending some time with friends. Naruto and Hinata arrived back at the safe house just before 2 a.m. Yuletide morning, tired, yet pleased. Uzumaki yawned expansively, realizing he had been awake for almost 40 hours. His girlfriend could not help but get caught up in the reflex. It looks like we won't make it back to the village in time for Yuletide, Hinata said, after recovering control of her lungs. Yeah, Naruto rubbed the back of his head, sorry you won't get to see your family, or your other friends today. But Hinata shook her head with a slight smile, and her voice was contented as she told him, this mission was special. And we're together, that's all I need. Then she realized what she had said, and blushed fiercely. Naruto rubbed his head again with an embarrassed grin. Then he hit his hand into his fist. Oh yeah? I almost forgot, he exclaimed. He opened his backpack, shifted aside his spare jacket, and pulled out a medium-size, wrapped box. The paper was dark blue, with silver bells and candles, and the skill of the wrapping was still rough, but a significant improvement over his previous attempt. I didn't think we'd make it back in time, so I brought this with, he explained as he thrust the box towards her. Happy Yuletide, Hinata. She took the gift nervously. She carefully removed the paper again, and set it aside. The box was of the simple and unadorned style used to wrap clothing. But the mass of the present was too great to be an item of cotton or silk, and as she shifted the box, the Hyuga heiress heard a metallic clink. She slit the tape holding the top on with her fingernail, and lifted the lid. Inside were 2 metal plates, right around 1 foot long, and tapered so that one end was 3 inches wide, while the opposite end was 4 inches wide. The tablets were raised and rounded around the outside edge, and each had the Konoha leaf inscribed in the center. Hinata was confused. Though they were beautiful, she could not fathom their purpose, beyond decoration. In addition, they were light for their size, and resting high in the box, further mystifying the girl. As she removed one of the panels, she understood. The underside of the panel had metal bars, long ways, just inside the shaped edge. Inside the hollow this created was a thin silk pad. And attached to the bars were 3 sets of leather straps, the first 2 pairs crisscrossing, while the third stretched directly to the other side. These are coat, she told him, you bought me forearm guards. Bought, made, Naruto shrugged, and her look of amazement grew. How did you know? She asked. I'm not totally dense, he looked slightly offended, I've seen you looking at the store. And I know other taijutsu specialists have some sort of braces to block weapons. Neji has those heavy leather pads built into his sleeves, and Lee straps his staff parts to his wrists. And then there is your weapon dilemma. What? His girlfriend tilted her head in confusion. Grammar Sunid has been after you to choose a weapon for your Jonin trials. Even if you don't ever use it, like Neji and his tonfa, or Choji and his mace, he looked smug, but you have been focusing on your new taijutsu styles, and if I'm right, you're getting almost as good as Lee. No, I'm not, she objected blushing. He just smiled indulgently at her. Either way, I did some checking, and there are some precedents for using coat as a ninja weapon. If you start wearing these, and use them for some backhand and forearm strikes, you should have an S-rank weapon in no time. Hinata lifted the other braca, and marveled at its lightness. She strapped the pair to her wrists, and swung her arms experimentally. The coat were a comforting presence on her arms, and did not impair her movement in any way. Naruto, these are far too good for a Yuletide gift, she chided quietly. Yuletide gifts were generally tokens, small and inexpensive. Really? He pretended to be surprised. I guess I'm not used to the whole gift exchange thing. Even without her Kekkei Genkai, she could see through the excuse, but she decided to let it pass. You made these? She asked, remembering his earlier protest. Yup. I guess you could say they're Kitsune's little sisters. What's their name? Naruto suddenly grimaced, closing his eyes in thought. I never gave them one. Maybe you should. She considered it for a minute, looking at the shimmering surfaces, and running her pointer finger over the smoothly embossed logo. Jin, Maki. She sampled the words, and liked the sound, they are Ginmaki. Okay, Ginmaki it is, Naruto smirked in approval, now you need to channel your chakra into them. Focus on the leaves. She followed his directions, and the spiral carvings began to glow. They are tied to you, he explained, they will only work for you, and for me, since I made them. He grew excited as he started to instruct, so if you channel your earth chakra into the leaves, you can reinforce their structure, so they can block almost anything. And if you put lightning chakra. Naruto, she interrupted him, holding out a small package, I brought your gift too. He took the present, instantly recognizing the shape and weight of a CD case. He opened it to reveal a dance music collection. Thanks, Hinata, he told her happily. But then he noticed something. Oh man, the plastic has been cut, he told her, I hope the disc isn't scratched. He tore off the remaining manufacturer's wrapping, and opened the case. As he did, a printed slip of paper fluttered out. He snatched it out of the air. What's this? He asked. A certificate for 6 swing dance lessons. I thought it would give us a place to go besides the golden shoe, she offered, and maybe a chance to learn some new steps. Hinata, he looked annoyed, and you were saying Ginmaki was too much for Yuletide. Well, the lessons aren't just for you, they're for me too, she said quietly, and I couldn't help myself, so. She was cut off when he kissed her. I guess we're even, he told her, thank you, Hinata. Thank you too, Naruto, she met his eyes with a look of raw satisfaction. Come on, he said, pulling away reluctantly, we should get some sleep before we have to head back. She nodded. After they had prepared for bed, he dragged his borrowed futon close to hers. After arranging himself under the covers, he stuck out his right hand towards her. She blinked at her surprise and happiness, and then folded the fingers of her left hand into his offered palm. And for the first time since her mother died, Hinata felt the joy of falling asleep while maintaining human contact. As she drifted away, she wondered if Naruto had ever had this feeling before. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.